you hear me?
Yeah.
This is my first time ever doing this, so obviously I'm going to mess up at least.
Yeah. Mhm. No, so I've never really chatted like on a podcast or anything like that either. So it'll be fun.
But you've done Zoom calls before.
Yeah, for like school, but yeah.
Well, then that's all it is.
Yeah, that's true. That's
You been
true.
watching any of the Savon or the Andrew Hiller stuff going on?
The what?
The Savon or Andrew Hiller?
No, I
You
I,
haven't
I
been
don't
watching
actually
any
know
of
who
that?
those are. Who is
Oh,
that?
dude, you don't know who Savon is from CrossFit?
So how's it
He
spelled?
did all the behind the scenes like back in the day from like 2010, 11, like all the way through to like 2018. And he was part of the
Okay.
media, he was part of the media crew that they just like X'd out after the 18.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, and
Gotcha.
he's also done some like really cool documentaries. He did one like Pulling John. It was like in arm wrestling and stuff
Hmm.
like that. You'd like that. You ever seen that?
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
haven't. I have.
he
Yeah, I'll
did
have
that.
to check it out.
You'd like that one. That was another really good one he did. And then he did, like I said, he did all the games. And Andrew Hiller's this dude. He was a regionals athlete or sectionals athlete, whatever they were
Okay.
doing. But now, like, he's been calling out like all the big time names and
Oh
basically calling
wow.
out CrossFit for not like adhering to standards.
Oh really?
And, yeah,
Jeez.
like movement standards and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He put out a video on David Hippensteel, that dude that wins like the 60 plus age group every
Mhm.
year,
Oh yeah.
him doing like this
Yeah.
really shitty workout. And
Mhm.
that guy ended up taking down his scores, like all of his scores. He's not in the games now. And like Savon
Oh
is all
wow.
about, Savon, he's all about starting something. So he's all
Yeah.
into it now. Like it's really cool. You need to check them out. You
I will.
like
I
it a
will.
lot.
I'll say there was a research project I was working on with Dr. Mangina at Kennesaw that we were looking at pacing, like during the CrossFit Open, like how did people pace the workout and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was through the video. So we chose like the top, 10,000 people and then randomly selected like 1,000 of them or something like that. And we were actually analyzing their video to see, when did they break on wall balls? How many breaks did they do? How many reps were they doing and stuff like that. And I remember that was one thing. It was during the muscle up. It was a few years ago. It was where you could choose your adventure. It was like the wall balls, ring muscle ups and calories.
Oh yeah,
And you
yeah,
could break it up
yeah.
however you
It's like
wanted.
150 wall
Yep.
balls
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
some 100 calories. 50. Yeah, I remember that.
Looking at that workout, there was definitely a number of wall balls within that like sample of the top 1,000 people that was like, we're not counting official reps here, but like I would have no rep that, and same thing with like muscle ups when it comes to like locking out and stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's a huge thing. I mean,
Mhm.
that's like a big thing, and that is a problem. Like as soon as they took away regionals, I was like, this is
Yeah.
about to be a poop show
Yeah.
because everybody can do all they want to, and they can put up
Mhm.
camera angles, and they can wear all black clothes. They can do all this different stuff to
Yeah,
make it
exactly.
look different. Or
Mhm.
help them like cheat the reps. But then you got really
Yeah.
good dudes that are always going to win, and they'll
Mhm.
put out a perfect video. But it's always the
Yeah.
ones that are like the fringe athletes that
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to get away with as much as they can
Mhm.
on those. But yeah. So, anyways, getting started up.
Mhm.
You're Jacob. You introduce yourself. A lot of people still know you from the gym, and
Yeah.
I told some people I was going to have you on today for video, and they were super excited to hear about you and know that you are missed.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Missed.
So I'm Jacob. I was coaching at CrossFit Bound for about, I guess it was about 2 years during my master's when I was down at Kennesaw. Currently up at University of Connecticut, where I just finished first year of my PhD in exercise science. And I'm actually have a really, really cool opportunity. I'm actually transferring out to University of Saskatchewan, way up in Canada, where I'll basically be working like a local CrossFit gym, more or less is going to be funding my PhD to finish out. So I'll be working as a coach again and doing like the physiological research related to CrossFit up at University of Saskatchewan in partnership with a gym where I'll be, like I said, working as a coach and like doing research at that gym. So that's really exciting. So this summer I'll be going back to Minnesota, living in my parents' basement for a few months before I move back up to move out to Canada. So yeah. So that's kind of about me. Yeah, no, I'll be honest. I've really been missing Georgia. I don't miss the heat. It's kind of nice. It's like 55 degrees out right now, so it's pretty enjoyable. But it's been strange because the gym I'm at right now, it's the first time that I was a part of a gym and not a coach. So just a normal member. So it's been really strange, like stepping away from coaching and whatnot. So it'd be nice to jump back into it. But yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. So what kind of research y'all going to be doing?
So in general, like, I think everybody involved in CrossFit knows that like there's something special there in terms of like changing people's lives and helping people be fitter and healthier and whatnot. But in terms of like the actual like mechanisms and how the body responds to CrossFit, because it is in a lot of ways drastically different than like traditional exercise, right? Where you're kind of combining strength with aerobic, with all these different exercise modalities. And so we'll be looking at basically what's the acute physiological and psychological response to it. So having people do workouts and seeing like what percent of their VO2 are they working at, what percent of their heart rate are they working at, and just trying to get an idea of like, what does that look like, the acute response? And then also how can you kind of impact that for your own training? Like specifically my interest is like scaling. You know, if the goal is to scale a workout to meet a physiological response, are current scales actually doing that? You know, is a ring row an acceptable scale for a pull-up, or should we be doing something else, right? For certain workouts, and kind of looking at that. So kind of the idea of scaling or modifying workouts to fit the needs of the individual, I guess.
Yeah. I know we've had several conversations when it came to scaling, and I think you and I are both like on the same page whenever it came to like ring rows. I hate ring rows.
Yeah. I think there's a time and a place and they can be beneficial, but it just like, it shouldn't, that's not always your scale, right? If pull-ups is the workout, don't always revert to ring rows. And I know it's really easy as a coach for us to do that as well, to like just suggest, oh, this is just an easy substitute because it's somewhat similar, but in terms of like the actual intensity that we're looking for, you know, might not always be the most appropriate option.
Right. So let me ask you this, like out of all, you've done several research papers, several studies and all that kind of stuff. You looked at thousands of videos on there. Like what do you think happens for people to get like the results that they do in CrossFit? Do you think it's more like mental? Do you think it's more community? Do you think it's more programming? Do you think it's just an aspect of all of those put together? Like, what would you, before doing that research paper, automatically like think of whenever you see the results from CrossFit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the first thing that really shocked me and like when my first time walking into a CrossFit gym, I saw like moms and dads and like older adults doing like overhead squats, and I couldn't even do an overhead squat at the time, you know, or like an overhead squat. And so I see that and I'm like, how are these people, you know, this person's 55 years old, how are they able to do an overhead squat? But like I was 21 at the time, like I can't, you know, like clearly there's something interesting going on. But in terms of like the most effectiveness, I do think there's something really important or really special about like the training methodology of like the constantly varied exercise and changing it up from day to day. I think that's a really unique aspect in terms of like the physiological response. But I think a lot of the reason why CrossFit has kind of exploded and changed so many people's lives is more the social aspects. Like you said, like the being a part of a gym, you know, you go to the 6:30 class and that's your class and people hold you accountable. So you're more likely to keep going to that. As well as it's kind of interesting too, because just like the exercise itself is kind of self-regulated. You know, like you might go to the workout, you might go to the class and the coach is like, hey, here's a suggested, this is probably an appropriate workout for you. But 3, 2, 1, go. A lot of times it's like, it's up to you to decide what you're going to be doing in this workout, you know, as the athlete or as the trainee. I think that's a really interesting aspect to it that keeps people coming back, kind of puts the health and fitness into the actual members' hands. As to what they get out of it when they're doing that specific exercise session. And so I think there's a lot of like psychological and different social interactions that really keeps people coming to CrossFit. And then on top of that, the methodology, I think just kind of compounds for really beneficial outcomes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like I always tell people all the time, like, this is your workout. Like you make it your own. Like you see what's on the board. And we could tell you what the response is and what it should feel like. But in the end, like you make this for you.
Exactly.
At the end of the day. And that's why it's kind of like small group personal training. And that's why we like starting off people with personal training. That way we can educate them and they can be a lot more confident going in, looking at a workout. Like, well, I can't do that, but I know what they want out of this. So I'm going to do this instead.
Exactly.
It's like I've had people before whenever they want to do Fran and they're like, man, I really want to sub 30-minute Fran. I'm like, all right, this is what you're going to do. Get on that bike and I want you to go as hard as you can for 2.5 minutes.
Exactly.
And then when they're rolling around the floor, I'm like, that's what you're supposed to feel like.
Exactly.
It's not 8 minutes and you're like, oh man, that was really tiring. No, you should be huffing and puffing, kicking your taking your clothes off, like want to die.
Exactly. And Fran in 7 minutes, like my capabilities is not the same as Fran in 3 to 5 minutes. Like that's a drastically different workout for sure.
Yeah, it's two totally different things, and people don't think it's the same stimulus, but that's the stimulus that we're looking. That's the
exactly
stimulus we get. I'll tell you one thing that I found interesting. Yesterday we did Severn in the gym, and because we're in Hero Month right now.
Yep.
And Severn has that 5K at the end of it. Well, I program on Thursday because our classes are usually slower on Thursdays anyways. But we still had way more people show up for that class, and out of our group, people that posted, I think it's probably like 80 to 85% of the people that posted actually ran a 5K. And I sat there and thought about that. And I was like, we don't train for 5Ks. We don't.
Exactly.
We do it once in a blue moon, but we had a whole gym come in for an entire day on a random Thursday and take off and run a 5K. And half of them did it in a weight vest, and they haven't ran in a weight vest. And that, people don't find that special because I guess in our community, we're kind of just numb to how special that is. But if you go to any other gym and you tell people to run a 5K, and they're like, I got to train for that.
Exactly.
So that's what we do all the time. And that's what I really love about CrossFit. I've been really getting into it. But I'm really interested in hearing what you thought about this, because there was a study come out, and I should have got the exact study what it was, but they tried to see the difference, and they tried to see the correlation if you combine strength conditioning with regular aerobic conditioning and the results you got out of that. And obviously they found people that trained for strength specifically, they got strength gains more than the cardio. People that trained for cardio got the cardio or aerobic gains that they wanted. People that did both in their training and simultaneously didn't really have the percentage of increase in strength nor the percentage increase in aerobic capacity, but they still had increases in both.
Yeah, exactly.
Limited. Now, where do y'all think that's going to fall, in y'all's study coming up with CrossFit and their methods?
Yeah, I think that's for a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, kind of like what you're talking about, right? CrossFit, when it first started, was really aggressive in a lot of ways and kind of poked the bear in the strength and conditioning world. And so that mixed with the fact that what you're talking about, right, where you're kind of muddying up the physical, the stimulus that you're doing, right? Your body has pathways that are adequate or appropriate for really high intensity exercise, like strength training. And then your body has pathways that are utilizing fat and stuff like that for more long duration endurance type of exercises. And we're kind of combining those in CrossFit, right? So we have the really high intensity pathways being stimulated, you have the longer pathways being stimulated, and a result of that, people are speculative saying kind of what that study found, where it's you're mixing all these different signals in the body, and it's they're not going to preferentially adapt because they're competing, if you will, for adaptation. And so that was one of the things that I think a lot of people still look at, and they're well, you're not going to see any adaptations because you're mixing up the signals. But then, like you said, that article said, plus every CrossFit gym around the world, it seems muddying that signal actually ends up leading to in the long term, this much more expansive kind of adaptation where, like you said, following a strength program, yes, you're going to get stronger, probably faster. Following a conditioning program, you're going to get more conditioned, better endurance faster. But doing it all at once, you're still going to get better conditioning, you're still going to get better strength, and you're going to be improving on other things on top of that too, in terms of mobility with the range of motion that we try to preach, and different technique and skill things, and just proprioception, how you can kind of control your body. So yeah, I think that's one of the main things that really interests me, why I'm interested in the acute physiological responses, because that kind of can tell that story of we have a bunch of different competing energy systems working at once, but they're still all adapting, which is, I think is very interesting, kind of contradicting or what other people typically thought in kind of strength conditioning.
Yeah. Now, what I like the most about it is whenever you have somebody the average day, the average mom and dad, the average person that comes into the gym, they want those type of adaptations. If you want to be a bodybuilder and you want to have that physique, then obviously there's ways of doing that. But once again, it all comes into your type of nutrition, your type of muscle fibers that you have, and all that kind of stuff, the results you're going to get, because not everybody's going to come out and look like Kurt Ayers, Mr. G.I. Joe, and compared to somebody some other folks in the gym. Like he's naturally just gifted to have that lean type of muscle tissue.
Exactly.
People want that, but even if they get bodybuilding for a little while with the correct nutrition, they're still not going to look like that.
Exactly.
And there's like this facade, and a lot of it I think has come from social media and Instagram and just like what everybody puts out there and what everybody sees and tries to be instead of just being themselves. But that's why I think like CrossFit or just our type of training in general is the number one way for somebody just to come in and be healthy, happy and healthy and fit and be able to go out and run a 5K randomly on a weekday. And then the next day come in and lift some heavy weights and be able to do it safely and efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to add to just like anyone listening, or like one thing I find really interesting about CrossFit too, is even just like the numbers. If you look at, I don't know the exact statistic, but I think on average, the number of people that own gym memberships, like half of them go unused, completely unused. Like people might sign up for a gym membership and never once go. So only like 50% of gym memberships are being used. And I'm talking like gym memberships as a whole, not specific to
gyms and everything else.
Exactly. Like 50% of memberships, they go unused. So of that, the 50% of people that are using it, they only go once, maybe twice a week. You know, like it's such a small portion of people that have like gym memberships that go 3, 4, 5 times in a week, right? On top of that as well, their gym membership probably only lasts like a maximum of maybe 2 years before they cancel it. Where I feel like every CrossFit gym I've been a part of, you know, like look at your guys' wall, that's just full of members that have been there for 3+ years, right? Yeah. And those are 3+ years of people that are going consistently 3 to 5 times a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, right? And I think says a lot about the training methodology and what people are getting from the gym compared to like other forms of fitness. Yeah.
I've been getting lately too, like in just the mental side of things. Like there was a study done where buddy, he fed poison to rats, and it was just like a little bit. He fed one group like a little bit of poison, and they ended up eating poison. They survived, and then he gave one group like all the poison. They just died right off the bat. And I was like, mentally, like us putting our bodies through this type of stress, we're able to handle things better. And I think that goes over into our everyday life. And I think people just learn how important this exercise is compared to daily life. And without this, it's hard to handle this over here. Yeah. And that's what I'm getting really interested in lately, just like the behavioral science side of it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of one of the reasons, like the research I kind of hope to do is a mixed kind of methods, both physiological, but also psychological, kind of looking at both of them. And I know we're going to be doing a bit of that, kind of looking at some actual like brain activity during CrossFit, maybe looking at some possible like cognitive response type stuff, like how does CrossFit affect different cognitive tasks, like and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like kids growing up, like the more you get them like outside wrestling and tumbling and getting like just being barefoot and having all the different sensations around, like that lights up and fires up their brain and allows, and they've already correlated that with just being smarter as they get older, just being able to problem solve and everything else, because they built more motor neurons and and patterns firing in the brain that can then take information and make it useful for them later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if that's got to work. I mean, I think I've read a couple of studies where they had Alzheimer's patients or like people that just had like first beginning stages of it. And they had them change up their diet and they had them add exercise. Take like Jen Wells with MS. Dude, she ran 5K yesterday and she's got MS.
Exactly.
This stage in the game, like she's lucky to even be walking. But she's running 5Ks and lifting and all that kind of stuff. And her doctor directly correlates that with her clean eating and the exercise she's been doing.
Yeah, no doubt. Like it's very clear. I mean, like the classic kind of example of like, you know, what you put into your car is going to make a difference, right? Like what you're putting into your body and what you're doing with your body is going to change kind of how it responds. You know, your body is really good at responding to what you give it.
Yeah. How about like when Matt Fraser eats Snickers like before every
Yeah. That's I don't know. Works for him. It doesn't seem to be working for me.
Rich did the same thing. He was eating Snickers and pizzas, and all of a sudden he's out there just dominating everybody. Yeah. But I always tell people, like, your body breaks it down as a fat, carb, and protein. And those guys' bodies operate at such a high level, like they can't eat a candy bar, and their body's just like, oh, thank God, food. Like,
they also eat that candy bar and then go on to like expend 4 times that amount of calories. You know what I mean, in that one session. So yeah. And so outside of that, they're eating super clean and like optimized meals and whatnot too, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So getting into what you do for us, like you still program for us because you're just really good at strength training. You and I, like, it's so funny. I remember we've been programming in the past and it's like very similar in like how we always program, especially strength stuff. And sorry, I had a call come in, but so how do you break down like the bound build, like the 3 days a week? And I know we kind of do like little cycles. Like, how do you break all that stuff down so our members just can know like what to expect?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of interesting because, you know, if anyone's ever followed like an actual strength and conditioning or just strength program, it's like what I program for Bound Builds sometimes resembles that, but it also kind of falls more into like the CrossFit concept of trying to constantly vary stimulus. So it's like, I'll have a general idea of, okay, you know, the CrossFit Open is coming up or whatever. We're in Hero Month right now. So the training that I'm programming is going to look much different to respond to like what's going on around that. But in general, like the only real hard like philosophy I try to stick to is like early on in the cycle is going to be a little bit higher volume. So it might be a little bit lower or moderate weight with a little bit more reps and or sets. And then it slowly kind of tapers down to much less volume, but much heavier weights and more rest between sets, basically. Like that's kind of like the one main philosophy. And even within that, it kind of changes. Like we might go through a cycle that's going to be more like 8 weeks, and then we might go through one that's like 4 weeks. Like I think before the Open, you know, I kind of had a mini cycle that lasted like maybe 5 weeks only. And so that's going to look different than, you know, what we're going to do for the next 4 weeks during Hero Month, and then what we're going to do for the next maybe 8 weeks after that, right? It just really changes. But in general, I try to start with higher volume, meaning relatively like lower intensities to an extent, higher repetitions, maybe higher sets and or less rest between sets, right? Just kind of making that stimulus more kind of aerobic, heavier breathing kind of fatigue. And then as the weeks progress, trying to make that less and less volume. So moving to the heavier weight, more rest between sets, and maybe even just maximal effort, right? Like I know when I first started the Bound program, I did a lot of kind of relative programming where it's, okay, let's build to a heavy 5 for today and then do 3x5 at 85% of that heavy 5, right? To kind of see where you at for today. Well, let's go based off of that. So just cut a little spoiler, we'll probably see more of that in the Hero Month programming, just because people are going to be kind of banged up and whatnot. So I'm not going to have too high of volume of training for this next month. But yeah, that's really like the main thing I kind of look at it is trying to make sure we're kind of in general going that route, and then trying to make each session for the most part a full body session, just because some people might only go to one strength session a week. Some people might go to, some people might do all three. And so if it's always upper body, lower body mixed, some people might only ever get upper body training and they never get the lower body stuff. So I'll usually have a focus on either upper or lower, but it's still going to combine both. Right. Kind of depending on what that first exercise is. If it's a lower body exercise, it's going to be predominantly a lower body day, but we're still going to include some upper body exercises to try to kind of counterbalance it.
Yeah. And it's so funny. Like we've had a few of our folks that do the elite programming. And for those that don't know, like we throw in the elite programming, the strength into that 3-day week. So they do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just regular bound build, and then or they do bound endurance, and then I have some like skill stuff, and then we do the bound build stuff, and then we have some like conditioning or metcons. But then on Tuesday and Saturdays we focus more on Olympic lifting, and then one day I'll pick like the snatch or like the clean and jerks. And then we usually do like pause sets, like halting sets, just for like technique work. And then whenever somebody goes and actually competes and they actually have to lift a weight, like in the Open, like we did this year, the quarterfinals, it's way easier. And it's amazing to see, like, following those 3-day weeks, just in our regular classes too, our bound build classes that we do, how many people PR at the end of those cycles whenever we come about. And I've always had some people ask me, like, why don't we just have like an upper body day, or why don't we just have like a lower body day? And I was like, I'm not a big proponent of that anyways. Like I've always been like, if I'm going to train, I'm going to train every muscle group I got.
Exactly.
And it might not be the most optimal way of doing it. Like whenever I did bodybuilding back in college and stuff, like I was 230, but I was built more like a bodybuilder than an athlete. And I always think about an athlete, like when we do yard work, we're using every muscle group. You're picking up every muscle group. Like everything we do uses every muscle group. So it's just like, that's how I want to train. That's how I want to
Exactly.
get better, is using that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's the same thing with CrossFit, right? We were just talking about like more on the kind of aerobic side of things, but CrossFit is, you know, you think back to early humans, right? They lived a very unknown life. And that's kind of how humans are the way that we are. And so our training now, CrossFit kind of resembles that, where it's like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but our training is going to try to like help us to prepare for it. Right. And so, you know, life doesn't tell me, oh, tomorrow is going to be really easy on your lower body, but it's going to be really tough on your upper body. So let's train lower body today. You know, it's like we don't have the freedom necessarily to know that. Now, when you're competing, you do, right? You know when you need to compete, so you can like directly kind of plan your training like accordingly to make sure you're perfectly ready to compete at that day, at that time. But for most of us that, you know, maybe don't compete quite as often or ever really, you know, just trying to make life easier by using, like you said, everything that we use in life, you know?
Yeah. And you said something too earlier. I really like whenever you do program the 5 RMs, the 3 RMs, 8 RMs. Like, I think those are like optimal ways to train, especially just for like a regular audience and everybody else. Like, having a percentage and doing like a periodization, yeah, it works. But man, when somebody's got like kids, when somebody's got a job or they got a crazy schedule and you don't get enough sleep, like you can still come in, you can still hit a heavy set of sleep for the day. And it might not be where it was, you know, last week, but still a heavy set of 3 for you today. And then when you're doing those drop sets, it allows you to focus on technique, a little speed work and everything else. Like, I think those are like crucial for anybody. And I really love like how you program those in for a majority of the time. And I know like coming up outside of the Hero Month is going to be like a rebuilding type for us. So our regular classes, we're going to be doing a lot of that type of stuff just in our regular classes.
Yeah, I love it.
Coming out of it, just like the summer rebuild, you know, and just recover and kind of recuperate from the open and now Hero Month. And then we're just going to have some fun and do some strength and general conditioning stuff during the summer.
That's really cool. Well, especially because I mean, summer, you know, like you said, people have kids, right? Like, I think that's one of the cool things about like CrossFit gyms too, is like, it's just normal people that have to deal with normal people stuff, you know? So during the summer, you know, people are going to be out vacationing and stuff. And so if you're all of a sudden in the middle of a really, really intense, like, oh, we're getting ready to do, you know, clean 1 rep maxes and we're training to do that. But it's like, well, this one person, you know, every weekend is going to the cabin and they're missing X number of days of training. So it's like, can be frustrating for that. So I think that's really cool to be able to, during the summertime, kind of take that like step back of, hey, let's just move or whatever.
Yeah. It's funny. Like we did like a little rep max, 1 rep max, like heavy single for 4 lifts, the power clean, bench press, deadlift, and back squat. And we had several people that PR'd all 4 of them. Right before we started Hero Month, we had PR'd like 50% of them, but we had a lot of them. It was really cool, like to see like the progress, even though we haven't been intentionally trying to do strength working classes, but just adding that in after the stimulus we've been doing from the open and the high intensity work and some other work we've been doing and throwing that in at the end, all of a sudden, boom, everybody's getting better at their lifts. And, I really appreciated that. And then we get started in Hero Month and people are already doing really cool things right now in this.
Yeah. And I think one thing too, that's really cool about like the more relative loading of, you know, establish where are you at for today versus, oh, let's just do 5x5 at 85%, which I know like the last handful of cycles have been more focused on that, like actual just, hey, we're just going to go raw percentage based. But the gym I coached at back in Minnesota, the guy that does the programming, Nick Stalock, really smart guy, but a lot of the strength is more, let's just establish a heavy barbell complex for the day, right? We have 20 minutes, establish a heavy complex, right? Once you find that, you can always tune back and just work on technique and stuff, which doesn't necessarily happen. But the nice thing about programming or setting up or trying to set up a class like that is instead of if it's every 3 minutes or every 2 minutes, which again, I know we've been doing a lot of, but I'm going to try to do a little bit less of that over Hero Month. So people are a little bit more self-governed to let their body kind of respond how they want it to. But using those heavy complexes versus the percentages, like, okay, yesterday, let's say, you know, you did that 5K on Thursday or whatever. Friday, you're probably not in the best shape. So if I just tell you to do 5 sets of 5 at 85%, you might not be able to hit that 85%, right? Just because your body isn't ready for that. So in this kind of mixed exercise setting, it's kind of I feel like it's really helpful to just let people just go to this like maximal intensity, but not a 1 rep max.
Right.
It's like you lift to a heavy for the day, but leave some in the tank kind of thing. I think there's a lot that can be learned and improved on from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, see, we were going to talk about that. I was going to ask you what your thoughts, like when somebody's new starting in, or if somebody just wants to get started in CrossFit, like what do you think the top priority for them should be whenever it comes to like baseline strength?
Yeah. It's tough. I think there's a huge, I feel like at least on the research side of things, something that seems like it's coming up. It's really tough to like actually put numbers to, but it seems like in terms of like improving performance, improving adaptation to like the training methods, there's a huge requirement for like the baseline skill of just simply learning the movements with at least somewhat proficiency, right? Obviously, we're not all going to be Olympic weightlifters, right? Like there's going to be people that'll never perfect a clean or a snatch, which is fine. And you're going to be able to get phenomenal adaptations, even if you have mistakes in performing those exercises. But at least hitting like a baseline proficiency level for like those kind of complex skills, I think is one of the most important things, because, you know, if you just focus on, oh, I want to improve my strength, or, oh, I want to lose weight or whatever, it's like that skill component might interfere with that, or might kind of prevent you from being able to get to that point, right? If you can't perform the exercises with adequate skill, yikes, then it's probably going to be really tough for you to actually get the physiological response that you're looking for in that training session, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the most important things. But at the same point, I know a lot of people kind of come into the gym and they know that, and it kind of prevents them from trying because they're afraid they're going to get injured or something like that, right? So it's also a matter of, you know, pushing yourself past what you kind of think you're capable of, but obviously with kind of that coach's guidance of, you know, like, hey, let's try this today, but no, we might have to revert back. Let's try the 72-pound kettlebell, but let's have the 53 there just in case we need to, you know, change it up on the fly type stuff.
Yeah, really like how you said that, like skill work, because I've always told people, like, you lift heavy, breathe heavy, and you develop skills. Skill and develop skills, a lot of people automatically revert to like handstand walking, muscle ups, and all that. Dude, back squat is a skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regular squat, regular push up, like all that. Like those are some of the baseline fundamentals that you have to develop. Yeah, running, like all of that stuff is a skill in and of itself. And so that right there is developing. Like we can always find ways to make you strong or find ways to let you breathe heavy, but developing those skills is crucial just for longevity and just for being healthy overall and not being pain-free. Take like Dylan. We had Dylan in here stretching today. We're trying to do like the lizard pose. Dude, he's balled up. Dude. I was like, what are you doing? A frog pose? And for the yogis, they know what a frog pose is compared to a lizard pose. But
is he still coming without his shoes already tied? So
yeah. And he's 15 minutes late. But he did run a 5K yesterday. He said that
there we go. That's
in his last time ever running a 5K, but he did it. But that's why I tell people all the time, like everything is a skill in the gym, and it doesn't have to be like something like you see at the games. Like it's just a regular front squat is a skill. A regular deadlift is a skill. Now, a lot of us have just like taken that for granted because we've done over 10,000 reps and we just kind of know, we just don't have to think about it anymore. We can just do it. But yeah, like that skill portion is huge. Yeah. And that's why I really believe like a lot of people that get started with us do really benefit really well just from like having that one-on-one with a coach, learning those fundamental skills, and then they get to move on and learn how to progress from those skills to acquire higher level ones.
And to add to that too, I would say one thing, at least, even this is something I've been doing, like my own training. I scale workouts all the time. By the way, this is for people listening. Like scaling is not a crime. I know that's a common like social media thing. Scaling is not a crime, right? You're just like meeting the demands for your body. But one way that you can look at workouts is, okay, let's say you go into Cindy even, right? Which, you know, might not seem like the highest skill exercise, but there's definitely obviously a lot of skill to it. And maybe you're not very proficient in pull-ups. So you're like, I'm going to do Cindy today, but I'm going to make sure I'm going to put a lot of effort into doing the pull-ups. And then I'm going to scale the push-ups and air squats in some way, right? So it's like I can choose part of the workout that I'm going to put a little bit more effort into, whether it's to learn how to do better or just to get my body able to respond to that exercise more. And then maybe taper off or scale the other exercises in. But that's something I've been doing, is like pick one of the components and focus on that, make that your priority for the day, and then adjust the other ones as needed. I think that's a potentially really helpful way for a lot of people to like incorporate learning new skills into a workout when we don't always have the time in the gym to, you know, spend 20 minutes practicing a skill alone, right? Like most people, they come into the gym, there's going to be some sort of strength, a little bit of conditioning. I know like at Bound, like you do a really good job of not always doing strength conditioning and like changing it up and whatnot. But in general, like it's really tough to design a class that's going to have adequate time to just focus on developing skills. It kind of has to happen during the Metcon at some point, you know?
Yeah. No, we have a workout today where it's dumbbell snatches, where it's split snatches, which is like a high level skill, and rope climbs. And we had this one guy at lunchtime, and man, he's just beating himself up coming up and down that rope, and he was on borderline of like injuring himself. And I've told him several times, like, dude, let's put the rope up on the pull up bar. Learn that skill of hooking your feet up, attaching yourself to the rope, getting that sensation, and just being confident and being able to lock your feet up. And then you come down the rope a lot safer. And he just thought he was doing himself and the person in honor of the workout a disservice by doing that. And I'm like, listen, man, dude, this is a skill. 10,000 reps. Like, you should be able to climb a rope without even thinking about it before you try to move on to what you're doing right here. You beat yourself up over this. I was like, we're not like this is. I was like, this is a joy that we get to do this. This is not like life or death. And you're treating.
It's also week one of Hero Month. It's also week one of Hero Month. You know,
calm down, another day. Like, we're okay. You're doing good just by being in here. And then we have the guy next to him who's never done a rope climb before. We hooked the rope up around the pull bar, showed him how to use his feet. He did like 2-3 rounds of that, 2-3 rope climbs of that. And then I was like, you're ready to climb a rope. First try, he's up the rope. And it was funny. We had 11. It was either like 11 or 12 at 9. And then we had like 12 or 13 at 12. And it was funny. Everybody was climbing a rope. In both those classes. And that's what's really special, I think, sometimes about this place, because you don't go to other gyms and you see 12, 13 people climbing a rope all at once. And it's just because we take value and we try to learn in a Metcon how to do a skill and slowing down and taking your time and working your way through and thinking about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. I think, well, I'm about out of time on my Zoom thing. I didn't make this. It's only got 40 minutes. And I know we only talked about talking for 30 minutes, but I know everybody's going to listen to this, is going to want you on again, because I really like talking to you about others, because you're a really smart dude. And plus, I like talking to you.
I enjoy it. Like I said, it was kind of funny when, you know, when I moved to Georgia, I kind of knew it was a temporary thing, right? I went down there to do my master's, and I kind of went into my master's knowing I wanted to do a PhD. So it's like, I know for the most part, I'm probably going to be here for 2 years. So I didn't necessarily like invest myself into like Georgia quite as much. And I loved the gym and I loved working there. And the second I was like, officially packed up and moving, I was like, holy crap, like this feels like much tougher to leave than I thought it was going to be. You know, it's like I was only here for 2 years and whatnot, but it's like, man, it's actually really tough to leave Georgia. But
you're nice
and a huge portion of that is the gym, you know. It's like it was very enjoyable working at the gym, even though when I started out I was very nervous, very shy, because I was like, you know, these people have been doing CrossFit for like 7 years, they don't want this like brand new young punk telling them what to do and whatnot. But I feel like for the most part I was able to break a wall and kind of get through to people.
Oh man, no, you made a huge impact here. And like I said, people miss you, and they miss your coaching style, and think they just miss having you around. You were a lot of fun for a lot of folks.
Maybe some people don't miss my music choice. I know that wasn't the most common thing.
They do not. But anyways, man, I gotta let you go. Cut off.
For sure, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, and I'm gonna get you back on here again. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always down.
All right, see you, buddy.
Yeah, have a good one.